Chapter 216, The Street. The dim yellow light outside the alley gave off a warm and fuzzy vibe. Zhu Bishi gave Lu Xiaoyu a confused look. All he could think of in his brain were the numbers 12.44. He was suddenly suspicious. Normally, it wouldn't be impossible for someone to ask the time. But for two people to come over and ask related stuff, it indeed raised suspicion within Zhu Bishi. But Lu Xiaoyu was too young to be considered as a threat. Only upon reaching 16 would a person's body be suitable for training. This was already an open secret within the realm of training, and Lu Xiaoyu's age did nothing to raise his suspicion. After all, this wasn't Africa or Southeast Asia where child soldiers were common. Zhu Bishi controlled his thoughts and emotions before continuing joyfully, "Thank you, young lady. Go home quickly now." Okay, Lu Xiaoyu nodded her head vigorously and left without turning back. Zhu Bishi looked at the back view of Lu Xiaoyu calmly to see if she revealed any signs of suspicion. But in the end, there was nothing suspicious at all. From Zhu Bishi's distress, plus 399. Only after Lu Xiaoyu walked forward for a few hundred meters did she see an opportunity to jump onto the rooftop once more. She went back to Lu Shu's side. "So? Is he really from the Heavenly Network?" "I'm afraid so," Lu Shu nodded his head. In his knowledge, only the Heavenly Network would practice such restraint. Lu Shu remembered everything clearly back when he encountered Liang Che. Sometimes when humans held great power, it was tough to strike a balance between logic and emotions. But looking at the Heavenly Network's attitude, choosing to look over it instead of being in the heart of the action, it seemed to imply that it was fine as long as the black market didn't go out of control. Lu Shu didn't know if there were people from the Heavenly Network inside. He then pondered and said, "The two of you are probably better off not following me in, just wait here for me. If there's anything wrong, try your best to protect yourself by any means. Or jump right down to look for me." Two siblings with little fury, the features of this group can't be more obvious. Under such circumstances, it'll be easy to tell it's them even if they go in with masks. Lu Xiaoyu was not pleased with Lu Shu's decision, but she could only abide by it as she often gone with Lu Shu's decisions when it came to this sort of important matters. Lu Shu retrieved a jacket from the pink luggage, but where could he find a mouth mask at this place? He could only make do with one of Lu Xiaoyu's small t-shirts to cover his face, and it coincidentally revealed an illustration of a robot cat. He had no time to care about it either and walked to the edge of the rooftop with his cap on. He jumped across the alley over the rooftop and then jumped tens of meters down. The end of the alley revealed a cluster of houses, and the entrance to a small pathway in the middle was covered by a plastic sheet. Its height was about 3 to 4 meters, just like in wet markets. Only when he went into this area did Lu Shu realize there was a whole new world inside. The shops by the street were all living quarters. Balconies were redecorated and all the houses seemed like mini-shops. Signboards such as "Little Lin's Antiques" seemed like they've been used and withered. It seemed as if they had been through a long time, and this place actually looked like it used to sell scholarly items such as calligraphy equipment and ink. Lu Shu was confused. So this place used to sell stationery and miscellaneous items, but it's selling magical items now? Then could this place still have anything legitimate? In his past, he never had the chance to go to such scholarly markets. The stuff sold at this sort of place was viewed as scams and a facade by him. Of course, Lu Shu felt that he might have been influenced by events in television shows. After all, he had to experience it to understand what such a place really was. Speaking of which, it was late at night, but there was actually quite a number of people here. Most people were low-key and wore caps or similar stuff, but no one had the intention to mask their faces or identities. Lu Shu was, once again, confused. Was everyone so blatant? The houses weren't the only places doing business. Aside from the shophouses, there were numerous small stalls set up along the street. Just one plastic table with some items on it could pass off as a stall. Lu Shu squatted down at the entrance to look at the items around him. The boss was an unsophisticated middle-aged man who was clad in an extremely unfitting suit. Within the suit was a pale blue t-shirt which was fading into white. As the boss looked at Lu Shu squat down to admire his stuff, he engaged Lu Shu excitedly. "Young man, your dressing is really unique." Lu Shu looked through the t-shirt on his face and asked without emotion, "Do you have any good stuff?" "My stall might be small, and I don't have magical equipment. But what I do have are some special instruments. I wonder if you'll even be able to recognize the good stuff." The boss pointed at a small wooden seal on a table excitedly. "Look, this seal is an antique kept by me. Since the increase in the magical energy, it suddenly started to emit a yellow light one night. It's really mysterious." Lu Shu was dumbfounded. "Just this?" The boss continued, pointing to a bronze sculpture, "Also on one of the nights since the dawn of the magical era, it suddenly emitted green light in my house. I think it also moved a little." "And this?" Lu Shu asked in annoyance. "You have so many glowing items in your house, you really shouldn't be selling magical items. Isn't it better to open a disco?" The boss was stunned when he heard Lu Shu's words. "How could you say that? Do you not believe me?" From Su Tsong's distress, plus 199. It wasn't that Lu Shu didn't believe him, but the way he explained his stuff made it sound like a disco. All that was lacking were the music and beats. Lu Shu then realized why all these people were so blatantly shopping within the black market, not even bothering to hide their identities. Everyone was here to buy knockoff and fake goods. Fake goods obviously didn't warrant a need to conceal identities. In this case, Lu Shu also understood why the guy from the Heavenly Network stayed outside. He didn't see the need to. Lu Shu responded softly, "I believe you, of course, I do. But your stuff sounds so divine, I don't think I can afford it. Can I ask if it's fine for anyone to set up a stall along this street?" The boss started to ignore Lu Shu. "Why waste my effort on you if you're not going to give me any business?" Lu Shu retrieved $100 and put it in front of the boss. He immediately started smiling again. "Choose your own spot. As long as it's empty, anyone could set up a stall. No one manages this place." Chapter 217, Testing. A stall could be set up just by finding an empty spot? No one is managing the entire black market? That also meant that no one from the Heavenly Network was meddling in this affair. Everything was developing naturally. Was it because they didn't have the capacity to? After all, the management of a black market should be handled by someone who was in the business. If the government meddles in these affairs, a bunch of people would definitely be scared off within moments. Lu Shu felt that such a black market probably wouldn't exist for long. Sooner or later, someone would see the benefits of this place and rules and regulations will be set up. At least don't let such a disco-running scammer here. At least have some morals when scamming. Lu Shu continued to walk forward, feeling as if he was looking at people similar to the boss he encountered. The items offered in the stalls were not special at all, and he could feel no magical energy from them at all. The spears he obtained in the remains all reverberated intensely with magical energy. Especially that one from the general's hands, which was the one possessed by Li Yixiao now. Back when the Black Dragon was released, Lu Shu could feel the terrifying waves of energy from far away. To be honest, his expectations for these stalls shouldn't be too high. After all, there's not a single practitioner here after a long while. It would be real mysterious if they could actually differentiate which ones exuded magical waves. Lu Shu previously wanted to see how much his spears were worth. After all, one day he would completely master his sword manipulation. His spear throwing, although powerful and terrifying, was just an ability he currently used. This led Lu Shu to think one spear could probably match the price of one plot of magical land? After all, plots of magical land were readily available, but magical equipment was quite rare, and not available to just anyone. But looking at things now, there was nothing he could make comparisons with. Everyone else put items from home and made them seem like special items. his spears would really seem mediocre. He moved deeper inside quietly. Initially, Lu Shu thought that the stuff in the shophouses would be different, but he was ultimately disappointed. Even with a bigger storefront, there wasn't much difference in the items. It was already dawn, but the black market was still bustling. There were people who really came to buy stuff, while there were those who came just to see what all the commotion was about. Lu Shu was rather disappointed as he saw hordes of people moving around. Damn, this black market was absolutely the biggest joke in his vacation. He then saw Yuan Tuoliang and his friends. Even when Lu Shu brushed past them, the other party didn't realize Lu Shu's identity. There's so much stuff here. Yuan Tuoliang and his friends couldn't hide their excitement and looked around in enthusiasm. But we don't know which items are real. The owners wouldn't let us try them, there's bound to be plenty of fake stuff. What if we unknowingly get ourselves a great steal? Yuan Tuoliang discussed excitedly. Lu Shu couldn't feel more annoyed as he listened to their conversation. Can't you differentiate between actual magical instruments and daily household items? Damn, wasn't this like walking across a landmine blindfolded? No, Lu Shu realized a problem all of a sudden. He knew the difference between magical equipment and normal items because of the magical equipment he obtained in the remains. But students outside of Yuzhou had never set foot in a remain. They might be Daoyuan students, but that didn't mean that they were exposed to magical equipment. This meant that they were misinformed and there was information asymmetry. Lu Shu suddenly felt a sense of superiority. The term getting a steal is too tempting. Most people hope to get lucky and get a steal in their daily life, to take the shortcut in anything they do. But the truth was, many of these people who hope to get a steal would, more often than not, get played by others. And scammers loved these people who thought that they could get a steal. Lu Shu didn't waste more time on this group of people. He had more important stuff to do, and what's most important now was to check if anyone sold anything genuine here. He was rather troubled. In such a big black market, he had still yet to make a legitimate finding in over 20 minutes of exploring. Or could it be that the shop owners hid their best stuff unless they encountered some rich tycoon? At this moment, a shop owner in front of Lu Shu was bellowing merrily, "Everything here is good stuff. Look at the whisk on the left, it's traded to me by a practitioner. Have you seen the great Taoist priest on television? This is from him." Lu Shu remained expressionless. Anything without magical waves had to be fake. As for that Taoist priest, Lu Shu indeed asked Shi Fei about him. That priest was one of the few Class C experts in the country, assisting a heavenly king in looking over Nanjiang. Seeing that this shop owner was clearly spreading lies and conning passers-by, Lu Shu turned around and decided to leave. Seeing him leave so willingly led the shop owner into thinking that this kid knew what's going on in this field. Under normal circumstances, most people would be captivated by what he had said. The shop owner analyzed Lu Shu's expression closely. After he stared for a few moments as if trying to confirm something, he suddenly spoke, "Are you a practitioner?"
Yeah.
Lu Shu nodded his head. There was no point in hiding this fact. What was the point of coming here if he wasn't a practitioner? The shop owner's eyes immediately lit up as Lu Shu admitted to being a practitioner. "Then I might have exactly what you need." Lu Shu was stunned for a moment. Could it be that the genuine transactions will only take place after he had revealed his identity as a practitioner? As if he looked through Lu Shu's doubt, the shop owner lowered his volume and explained, "This black market of ours might not have been in operation for a long time, but it does have a huge reputation. It's not that we don't dare to sell some stuff, it's just that many commoners come here every day to ask about everything without making any purchase. It's just a pure waste of time." So afterward, we discussed and decided that only practitioners could purchase the good stuff. Why would commoners need all these? So we will choose our customers. We will make sure our customer is a practitioner before we take out the good stuff. Oh. Lu Shu was rather shocked. It was so troublesome? He then asked, "What do you have here?" Forget about those that are colorful and emit light. Share something good with me. Expert, the shop owner smiled and stuck out a thumb. Sadly, I do not have the magical equipment you want. But I have magical stones. Lu Shu acknowledged him. Can I have a look? The shop owner replied softly, could you perhaps exhibit some of your abilities, please? As he finished, the shop owner brought a wooden ball forward. Lu Shu received the ball and with a squeeze of his palm, the ball was crushed to smithereens. The integrity of the wood was strong, and it required an immense amount of strength for it to be crushed. The shop owner was shocked. Previously, there were buyers and they just had to cause a crack or dent in the ball. As long as they could do it, they were not commoners. But Lu Shu's move was extremely terrifying. Lu Shu himself didn't think much of it as it was just a breezy squeeze of his hand. But in the eyes of the shop owner, Lu Shu had become the minority of great practitioners. Chapter 218, Sold for Cheap. This shop house was made up of approximately 2 units, and it was narrow yet long. Who knew what the designer was thinking when he designed this shop house? Lu Shu followed the boss and suddenly realized that as he moved through the house, he could feel magical waves pulsating. He was stunned for a moment. Was there a practitioner or meta-human in this shop house? He focused on the magical wave. The person inside was probably on the upper tier of Class E. If whoever was emitting these waves was a Daoyuan student, then he would be one of the top students outside of Yuzhou. No wonder this shop owner dared to sell magical stones and had no fear of being robbed. Lu Shu even felt that he already knew the origins of the magical stones of this shop owner. The shop owner knocked the door and it opened, revealing a wooden box. This box looked antique but prestigious, and upon opening it, there were 2 small magical stones. The diamond-shaped magical stones were distributed by the Heavenly Network. But the serial numbers they initially had were scraped off by some sharp object. The integrity of the magical stones was not that strong. In fact, they couldn't even compare to normal stones. Else, the Heavenly Network would have used other methods of distribution instead of splitting them into small pieces. Initially, Lu Shu thought that it was extremely sly of them to serialize the magical stones, and he wondered who came up with this idea. Afterwards, he realized that it was quite useless. Since the Heavenly Network could carve millions of serial numbers on the stones, other people could come up with methods to erase these numbers. At least for Lu Shu's magical stones, they were all settled by Corpse Dog. Lu Shu looked at the 2 magical stones in the box, thinking the shop owner really did put an effort into storing them. They looked extremely exquisite sitting in the wooden boxes, and Lu Shu felt as if they looked better than his own. This was one of the tactics of cunning businessmen, to use exquisite storage methods to raise the price of expensive items even more. A scam. The boss laughed merrily. Don't be captivated by the loud noises from the other shops. Do they have the real stuff in their possession? The stuff they have can't even be sold as antiques. They're just out to con customers. Lu Shu nodded his head. How much for your magical stone? The owner looked passionate and sincere. Everyone knows the importance of training now. A single stone could save plenty of time, and people say that time is life. How much money are you willing to trade for life? TSK, Lu Shu let off a cold breath. So much philosophy for just a stone? Everyone in Daoyuan class had a similar level of ability now, and they didn't differ much. Training methods can only be attained through important contributions. If you were to be more courageous than others and lead the line in battles, you would be able to gain recognition, and wouldn't the rewards all be yours? All these opportunities are only given to those who are prepared. The boss continued. Lu Shu almost showed him a thumbs up. Wow, so much philosophy. Businesses should really be conducted like that. He asked casually, so how much is your magical stone? The owner looked quite dissatisfied. Am I selling merely a magical stone? This is the future. Lu Shu was speechless. What are you high on? Can you speak in human language? $180,000. the owner said firmly, as if he wasn't willing to reduce the price by even a cent. But in this line of business, they had to know how to set their price. They were susceptible to bargaining, so their opening price usually differed from their transactional price. Magical stones were definitely not worth $180,000. Although they could save the user one small cycle of training immediately, they were easily depleted. Moreover, the effects they had for users of Class E or higher were greatly diminished. Even for the most valuable items, market forces would force its price back to market equilibrium after the initial hype dies down. Occasionally, magical stones would surface in the black market and they were worth about $110,000 to $150,000 generally. With an opening price of $180,000, it seemed like the boss was prepared for some bargaining. But just as he was waiting for Lu Shu to bargain, Lu Shu suddenly said righteously and in all seriousness, "This price is not right." The owner was frustrated, but he still looked calm on the outside. "Is your future not worth $180,000? You didn't understand me." Lu Shu shook his head. "I'm saying that you're selling it at too low a price. I thought about what you said and it all made so much sense. Money is just paper and merely a number. Is it more important than time and our future? Of course not. Boss, $180,000 is really too low." Lu Shu's words confused the shop owner. He tested the waters softly, then. 200,000? Did he encounter the son of the owner of the land here? How could there be someone who fusses over something being too cheap? Lu Shu nodded his head. $200,000 seems more reasonable. The shop owner's eyes lit up. "So?" Lu Shu's face was full of sincerity. "Truth to be told, I too have with me $200,000 worth of future I want to sell to you, boss." Shop owner? From Zhang Guohua's distress, plus 666. Is this guy actually selling his own magical stones? So all those expressions and emotions just now were for naught. This is mental. Zhang Guohua was so stunned he almost blacked out. How could he meet such a person, even more pretentious than himself? Lu Shu thought about it. As he didn't want to reveal himself, very few people would be able to take hundreds of thousands of dollars to have a transaction with him. Moreover, some of these small shops probably did not have so much cash on hand. So the best way was to sell them individually. Magical stones were in short supply in the black market. The shop owners knew clearly that they couldn't get their hands on magical items. So the only items they could sell to people who understood this sort of stuff were merely magical stones, magical food, and some magical pets. Magical food was a rare sight currently, but its price was gradually decreasing. Because more and more people were growing this sort of plants. And as for magical pets, they were few too. Currently, the most profitable product would be magical stones. A need might be a need, but its price was definitely not 200,000. The shop owner pondered for a moment before saying, "In actual fact, time and a person's future isn't worth that much." These words were too contradictory. Thinking of it made him sick, but pride was not as important as money. For the money, it was all right to put pride aside. From Zhang Guohua's distress, plus 188. Lu Shu replied gleefully, "So we'll stick to the original price of $180,000? The shop owner's face turned black. 100,000. It's the price in the market now. I still have to raise the price to sell it to someone else after buying it from you. There's a risk in this business. I can't just do it for free, can I?" Now that the owner was not being philosophical and haggling over Lu Shu's future, their conversation was much more straightforward. The final agreed price was $118,000, and this fulfilled Lu Shu's expectations. Time was of the essence in such a situation, the quicker the better. Lu Shu really didn't want a situation in which they had to negotiate and bargain half a day. Lu Shu held on to his cash and left. As Zhang Guohua looked at Lu Shu's back view as he left, he thought teenagers nowadays were really not simple. Chapter 219, 219 slipped through the cracks. With a creak, the doors within the shophouse opened and a gleaming young man in black-framed spectacles walked out. Through the light rays within the house, the old yet thoroughly antiques could be seen. There were porcelain items as well as antiques made of bronze. There was a really wide array of them. Zhang Guohua pointed to some crushed wooden bits on the floor. He crushed it. Can you do it? The teenager shook his head. He might be one of the best Daoyuan students of Shijing City, but he definitely couldn't crush the wooden ball to such a state. Zhang Guohua said softly, "Son, didn't you say there aren't many people stronger than you in Shijing City? Then he should be quite famous. Is it that prodigy with tiare aptitude?" The teenager shook his head once more. "No. I'm afraid he's a demon from some other city here to settle his magical stones. Only demons don't require magical stones to raise their power, because their own body's training speed is more than enough." At this moment, the teenager regarded Lu Shu as someone from another city who came to get rid of his stones. But his analysis was right. Lu Shu indeed didn't need magical stones because he really didn't need them at all. Lu Shu was relieved after settling his magical stone. He wouldn't earn as much from a year of selling eggs and stinky tofu. But with the money, he had more confidence. After all, hundreds of thousands was a massive amount for a high school student. At this period, most males of the same age were probably stressed over a few $100s. To chase after a girl required money as they had to go for a meal or watch a movie during dates, and the meal couldn't be too cheap as well. A month's worth of allowance of a few $100s, thousand for those who were better off, was just not enough. Even if they didn't chase after girls, they would smoke or read comics. Some even enjoyed drinking. Most teenagers, unlike portrayed in dramas and movies, weren't worried about relationships but being poor. Now, Lu Shu had the ability to bring Lu Xiaoyu out to play whenever he wanted to, even if it was out of the country. This was the life Lu Shu wanted, one which had stability. He believed in a saying relentlessly: true heroes live their lives to the fullest, they love their lives passionately. No one was more appreciative of their circumstance than Lu Shu, who had to work hard to get to where he was today. Lu Shu held onto his cash and was planning to go back by where he came from, but just then, he saw someone squatting down over a stall. His face was tightly covered, and he was eye-catching from the crowd. Damn. Lu Shu was stunned. He really concealed his face so much. Without seeing someone so eye-catching with all the concealment, he wouldn't have understood how he appeared in the eyes of others. Especially with the robot cat printed on Lu Xiaoyu's t-shirt. Now that he had the time and mood to ponder about other things, Lu Shu felt troubled on the spot. But it wasn't appropriate to remove the shirt now. Instead of being so stressed over the pride he might put aside, he could carry on wearing it. After all, his face was already hidden. Just then, as he was still some distance from that person, he thought of something. The other party hid his identity like himself. Could it be because he had something valuable in possession? It was very possible. Lu Shu observed the other party. He was sitting at his stall quietly, and everything on display was common, nothing special or with magical waves. He didn't have much of a reaction whenever someone went over to check out his stuff as well. But Lu Shu still felt that there was something wrong. Lu Shu found a random stall and squatted down to conceal his prolonged observation of the person. The stall owner in front of him hasn't had a customer the entire day, and the moment he saw Lu Shu checking out his stuff, he was extremely passionate. "Young man, everything I have here is good stuff. This bronze sculpture is an ancient treasure. Have you seen Investiture of the Gods? This item's from that dynasty. This might even be owned by the great Jiangxia. Investiture of the Gods, really?" Lu Shu was rather annoyed. His gaze landed at the owner with a mask not far away occasionally. He conveniently responded, "That dynasty? Do you mean the previous week?" The stall owner's face turned black. "How could you say something like that?" From. At this moment, Lu Shu suddenly realized. He was too focused on observing the items that he neglected a more important aspect. There were magical waves coming from this guy. This was a practitioner, a low-leveled practitioner. With more specific observation, this guy had some gray hair and quite a number of wrinkles on his exposed forehead. He seemed rather aged, probably about 40+ years old. Lu Shu walked over slowly and squatted down in front of his stall to observe his items. He then asked casually, "Boss, do you have anything real?" "No," the middle-aged man replied calmly. He didn't have the slightest tinge of passion. Instead, it felt as if he was observing Lu Shu coldly from the side. Lu Shu thought that since he could see him, Lu Shu could look at him too. The two concealed people looked at each other through their eyes. 1 minute, 2 minutes, 3 minutes. There's a game which you might not have heard of, it's called Whoever Blinks First Loses. Lu Shu, don't ever lose. From Li Dian's distress, +4 +9 +2. Li Dian rubbed his eyes, feeling as if he just encountered something weird. Lu Shu suddenly said, "You probably slipped through the cracks." He didn't seem to be someone from the Heavenly Network. At his age, this guy obviously wasn't from Daoyuan class and his ability was so low he probably just got to class F. How could there be such a person in the Heavenly Network? Shi Fei and the rest were picked specially from the army. Moreover, the other party didn't have the slightest tinge of military aura. On the contrary, he exuded the aura of a nerd and really looked incompatible with his stall. Li Dian's expression did not change, but he understood what Lu Shu meant clearly. From Li Dian's distress, +523. The other party was guarded, but Lu Shu understood everything the moment he received the distress points. He said bluntly, "Rest assured, I have no intention of bringing you back. I just want to know what you brought to the black market, or, what do you want to buy?" Just as he finished, Lu Shu revealed a corner of his military identification card. This way, he didn't reveal his full identity. There were now many practitioners with military identifications. Li Dian deliberated for a long while. Having slipped through the cracks and avoided notice, he had finally encountered someone from the Heavenly Network. Naturally, he had a distaste for and shunned him, but Lu Shu's military identification gave him an intense pressure. "I only trade magical stones," Li Dian said softly. Lu Shu hesitated for a moment. He could feel that the other party had hopes for magical stones. Was he planning to use magical stones to support his training? He needed magical stones because his training progress was too slow. But he couldn't afford them, so he's trading? Lu Shu thought of a few possibilities in an instant. He then said, "I have a magical stone. But trading depends on how valuable your item is." Chapter 220, The Purple Golden Gourd. To Lu Shu, it was not a good thing to have many magical stones in possession. Back in the shop house, even though he had reached a consensus with the shop owner, he only dared to sell one. There were many factors he had to consider. Firstly, a shop owner might not have that much cash. Also, Lu Shu didn't dare to reveal so many of his magical stones to an unfamiliar shop owner he barely knew. But this Li Dian in front of him seemed different. He was someone left out by the Heavenly Network. Naturally, he feared and was suppressed by Lu Shu's identity as a member of the Heavenly Network. To put it bluntly, one was a soldier and the other a fugitive. And the other party had been training on his own in secret. Even if he manages to find a magical stone, he'd have to use it in secret. He, of course, wasn't from any prestigious or large household, or he would have easily gotten the money to purchase magical stones. Why trade? Li Dian spoke softly, "At least 5 stones or else I wouldn't trade." "Do you have so many?" Lu Shu was stunned. He was still worried about having not enough magical stones previously. But the other party, surprisingly, wasn't asking for much. Actually, he was just asking to see what magical item the other party had in possession, but listening to this offer, Lu Shu felt as if he could do a trade. It had to be known that magical equipment was much rarer than magical stones. At least, magical stones had a fixed source. Many members of the Heavenly Network had access to them. 90 to 100,000 of them were distributed every year, and it was no surprise that tens or even hundreds of stones would be leaked out. But magical equipment was different. Up till now, they were only sighted in remains. Speaking of which, how did this Li Dian possess a magical item? Could it be an ancestral item? It was very possible. Who knew how many of these items were passed on from ancestors in this world? He should go out and shop around in Luocheng more, and he might be lucky and encounter something with magical waves. Lu Shu remained expressionless. Don't care about how many stones I have. I want to see what you have first. He had his suspicions, but this guy didn't seem like he didn't understand the value of magical equipment. But his asking price was really rather low. 5 magical stones amounted to just approximately $600,000. Could it be that there were problems with this magical equipment? Wouldn't it be a massive waste of time if he was shown another colorful and light-emitting item after spending so much time here? Who knew who started this trend within this night market, thinking that everything that's colorful and luminescent was the real deal? Li Dian hesitated for a long time before saying, "This place isn't convenient to talk. Follow me." Lu Shu didn't see him as a threat or worried at all. After all, if that guy had bodyguards of Class C, he wouldn't be here to set up such a lousy stall. As for anything below Class C, Lu Shu didn't feel like they could be of any real threat to him. The two of them wended deep in the market until they reached a corner. Li Dian stealthily retrieved a small cloth purse about the size of a palm. Lu Shu pondered for a moment. He couldn't feel any magical waves from it at all. But as the man opened the purse, Lu Shu saw that within this purse, there were weird gold stitchings, and from the moment the purse was opened, he could feel abnormal magical waves. This cloth purse could actually isolate and conceal magical waves. Within the purse was a small purple gourd. Lu Shu couldn't tell the material it was made of. It was neither gold nor wood. Although he couldn't tell its material, he could feel the very real magical waves. Lu Shu knitted his eyebrows and asked, "What's the use of this thing?" "This is my family heirloom passed down by ancestors." Li Dian feared Lu Shu's identity as he really detested the Heavenly Network. He never thought that he would bump into one today. Didn't they say that the Heavenly Network would leave this black market alone? Was there a lapse in communication? Li Dian continued his introduction. "Since the dawn of the era of recovery of magical energy, my training speed was too slow for me to understand and investigate the use of this relic. But whenever I use magical energy to control it, I just have to shout someone's name and it'll have a big reaction and my magical energy will be depleted. Have you seen the journey to the west?" He had just been asked about the investiture of the gods. Now this guy was asking about the journey to the west. Lu Shu's face turned dark. "Are you trying to say that this gourd belongs to the golden-horned king in the journey to the west?" "My word, mister, you don't look like him at all." Lu Shu never read Journey to the West, but from the television series, he knew that Li Dian definitely wasn't related to the golden-horned king. He looked nothing like him. Wait, but who was the golden-horned king's boss? Was it Lousy Li? Damn, it can't be such a coincidence. In actual fact, the journey to the west touched on many moral aspects of training. The golden-horned king's descent to humanity expressed the materialistic and monetary aspect. Alright, this was all Lu Shu's own inference. Of course, Lu Shu would never believe that this thing was the actual purple golden gourd. And he was clear that Li Dian knew this was not the fabled item as well. How could it be worth only 3 magical stones if it was real? He didn't seem gullible and dumb either. Li Dian said softly, "Then how do you explain that there's a reaction when I shout someone's name?" Lu Shu thought for a moment. "You try it for me." Li Dian then bellowed softly to this purple gourd, "Yu Yunpeng." Lu Shu. And at this moment, the purple gourd lit up with a bright purple light. Lu Shu could feel the magical energy from Li Dian's body being sucked into the purple gourd and following that, It emerged out of the gourd as a stream of energy towards the sky. But the energy could only last it about 5 meters. Seeing Li Dian's face turn rather pale, Lu Shu was stunned. This really was something special. If Yu Yuanping was really within 5 meters, could he be sucked into the gourd? Wasn't the consent of the other party necessary for him to be sucked in? Lu Shu felt a burning sensation within him. Wow, this really was a treasure. Li Dian said slowly, so? Lu Shu thought for a long time. Can you let me try? I want to see if you have magical stones first. Li Dian responded. Lu Shu took out a magical stone and showed it to him before keeping it. Li Dian's eyes lit up upon seeing it, and he passed the purple gourd to Lu Shu. Lu Shu took the gourd and shouted, Yu Qian. Li Dian? What did you learn from me? From Li Dian's distress, plus 33.
What does it mean to be happy? 'Cause it looks like we all don't know. Glass half full or empty, man, we just putting on a show. Try to look to the heavens.